Hi, Diana.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I've got someone else coming in, so let me just admit her. Actually, tell me how to say your last name.
Bernstein?
It is Bernstein. Okay, I want to make sure I was pronouncing it properly. Okay, good. And thank you for your bio, and thank you so much for doing this.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a very interesting experience for myself as well.
I'm sure. I'm sure. These are interesting times.
Yeah, just one thing. So my husband is teaching at 2, so if you can just make sure like finish like a minute or two before 2, if that's possible.
Before, yeah, you mean at 1 o'clock? We'll be done at 1 o'clock.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, 1 o'clock. Yeah, yeah. I'm on
Oh, yeah.
Eastern time for some reason.
Yeah, sure, sure. And sometimes people, yeah, we'll make sure we're done right on time.
Okay, good. I just so he could, get ready for his class. So
Sure, sure. No, that'll be great.
as you can imagine, it's
Yeah, I'm sure the two of you are juggling. Now you know how to do your screen share and all that good stuff.
I think so.
Okay, all right, perfect. Perfect, perfect.
Do you see me okay?
I can. And we're recording these and then we're sharing them because our graduate students write reflections on these talks. And that way people can see them later too. So, and then usually, and it's up to you what you'd like to do, but usually we'll have, people just type into the chat any questions, but if you want people to be able to ask questions during your talk, whatever you feel comfortable with works for me.
Sure, sounds good.
Hey, Gordon.
Hello.
You're muted. Let me see if I can unmute you.
Oh, I found it.
I got you. Okay.
I'll get to stay for a little while.
Okay, great. How are you doing?
Good. Well, it's crazy. Okay, I just got off of a Teams conference with Henry Jones.
Okay. Good, good. How's he doing?
He's doing good. I think I'm about to offer him a similar deal to what you have.
Excellent. That sounds great.
And
good.
I'm going to talk to Steve about what's going on over in our favorite computer science program. Have you talked to Sarah at all?
We've been touching base every now and then.
Nothing negative has happened there. It's just, as you might imagine, the modeling that we're doing these days is not about hiring.
Yes, I know.
Okay, let me run and get something to drink. And then
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
is Diana still on? Oh yeah, there you are. I see
Yeah.
you.
Hi.
Yep.
There. She's there.
Can you see
And
me?
how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Are you enjoying this mess?
Sure. I'm enjoying the bonding with my kids.
Yeah, well, I'm a little late for that, but my dog's really happy that I'm home.
Yeah. Let's see that.
I bet. How's homeschool going for you, Diana?
It's interesting. Yeah, I can't believe how much they have to do. It's yeah. I mean, seriously, teachers, they are all respect to teachers. They really deserve it.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's challenging keeping them just keeping them on schedule and I don't know if your kids get this, but my kids get all their work, or my younger child gets all of her work right first thing in the morning. And so it's not like your typical elementary school where you have recess and you go to PE and you go to lunch. It's just like, all at once. So I think we try to spread it out a little bit so it's not so overwhelming for her.
Yeah, I don't know. It's quite overwhelming.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. And I'm sure you guys are all kind of like we are, trying to keep our bandwidth down so that we're not all on Zooms at the same time.
Oh, we happen. That happens a lot.
Yeah,
I'm actually wondering how that's gonna work, but hopefully will work well.
yeah,
We please have 3 streaming at the same time. So.
Yeah, the teachers are working really hard. I feel for them, especially, you know, at the university. A lot of us, at least, we're pretty hot tech savvy, and we're pretty up to date on these things. You know, a lot of the elementary teachers just have not been. They haven't had to be. So it's I'm sure it's been really challenging for them. I know I saw something on Twitter when this all first happened. It said, I forget what celebrity it was, said, but teachers should be paid $1 million. She was just like, I can't handle my kids. And I've had so many people say, I've got a PhD, but I can't teach my kids. Please help me.
Yeah.
Our Kim Wingo in my office came in last Wednesday, I guess, and she said she was I said, don't be coming in. You can do all this. And she said, I got to get away from my kids or I'm going to kill them.
Exactly. This is good for my children for me to be away.
Sorry, I had to check that my my door is actually locked. So I don't know.
You don't want a viral video of your child running in the background?
I'm sure it's been done before.
Yeah, did you see that one of the newscaster? This was before all of this, but that hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just so fun. And that poor mother, oh my gosh, she was mortified. It was,
Yes.
It was hilarious. Yeah, I'm sure it's happened many times these days.
Yes. How many people we expect?
Well, we'll have, I sent this out to several people actually, and some of my colleagues too, that we've been working on some climate science education stuff in the state. So I really don't know. Sometimes we'll have anywhere from like 15 people to 30-ish. I mean, this topic I think is a little broader than some of the other ones we've had, so there might be a bigger audience just because of the topic and sort of general interest, and hopefully people are thinking about Earth Day tomorrow, and maybe it fits into some things that current conversation and things too.
Yeah, well, I was trying to make it very broad and for non-scientists, and kind of I'm hoping that I'm doing a better job on this.
Good, no, it'll be great. And I invited actually some of my colleagues, even from the Art Museum here in town, and the Pascagoula River Audubon as well. Great. So just people I know that just sort of educators that are involved in either awareness of the environment or who work with children who this could really benefit too. I think just thinking about it. Hi, Ken. Diana, you probably not met Ken. Ken teaches almost 500 students every year environmental science at the university.
Oh.
He's muted right now. Hold on. Sorry, I just unmuted you, Ken. Go ahead.
I think I'll run for governor. Everybody knows me.
I keep thinking you should.
I would vote for you, Ken.
I'll vote for you too, Ken.
Okay, thank you, Gordon. You've been for decades. And your hat is very becoming. I should go get mine.
Well, this is what happens if you can't get a haircut for 3 weeks, right? I could go back, when I came to USM, and Ken, I don't think you remember this, I actually wore a ponytail in those days. I might go back to a ponytail before long.
Yeah. Well, we all go through chapters.
Yeah, 1974 was yours, I remember.
Yes. It was a good year. Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Sabina, how are you?
Hello.
Hey, Patrice,
Hi, Dr. Swagler.
how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm just burnt out right now.
How are you?
Yes,
Well,
ma'am.
congratulations again on your job offer. I'm so excited for you.
Oh, I have finished the interview Friday. I'm just waiting to hear back from them. Other than that, I have another interview with urban teachers that's coming up this Thursday.
Excellent. Excellent.
Oh, what is that?
I'm using the waiting room to make sure you don't have any Zoom bombers, Diana.
Yeah, that was kind of a concerning thing.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, as soon as, especially with kids, right? All these kids are on Zoom all the time. That's what's really, you know, adults, we can manage and handle things a little bit better, but for kids, you know, they're all using passwords and all that, but it's still, there's just so many little minors on computer screens these days. So,
Right.
hey, Henry.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
Doing pretty well. Changing up info.
We will just wait another minute or two. We try to start usually right at 12:15, once people grab their lunches and whatnot.
Look at those handsome gents in their USM caps.
Oh, nice, Ken.
I feel complete now.
Oh, you
Oh.
found yours.
Every rich has got to have a comb on his head, you know.
Nice. And Henry's got the USM shirt. I went with the flowers and the green for Earth Day. So.
Very thoughtful.
Blue for blue sky.
Excellent. Okay, well, it is 12:15. So welcome to our 2020 STEM Education Speaker Series that we host with the Center for Science and Mathematics Education. It is my pleasure today to introduce Dr. Diana Bernstein. She received her undergraduate degree in Atmospheric and Environmental Sciences, her master's in Environmental Science, and her PhD in Atmospheric Science from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Before joining USM, she completed a postdoctoral fellowship at Cornell University and at the Large Lakes Observatory at the University of Minnesota Duluth. She is an assistant research professor in the Division of Marine Sciences at USM. Her research is focused on studying uncertainties in current and projected climates using Earth systems models. Her scientific articles have appeared in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, Geophysical Research Letters, and other publications. It is my pleasure to welcome Diana today to speak about climate science and climate change, appropriately the day before Earth Day. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you so much for introduction. I am going to share my screen, but I think you need to enable that function for me, please. Oh, okay. It comes with me. Are you host the same time too? Sorry.
No, so I'm not hosting now. You are hosting and you should
Okay,
be
so
able-
now I will have to let the people in too.
Oh, you're right. Let me see. Are you seeing more people joining?
Yeah, I just let somebody in.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking about that.
No, that's okay. I see somebody else's.
Let me see if I can make myself back host and then you don't have to do that.
Yeah, could we try to do that?
Yes. Let me see. I think you have to make me host. I can't take it from you now that I gave it to you.
You should, sorry, Julie, this is Ellen Weinauer. You should be able to do co-hosts, and then one person can do the administrative stuff and someone else can do the screen sharing.
Ooh, thank you, thank you.
Well, I mean, this is what we've done for a couple of things in the Honors College anyway.
Okay. All right, how's that, Diana? Oh no, shoot, we can't. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to set up co-host.
Usually it has been for us an option in the participants bar, but it may be how the Zoom
yeah, I think it might be
account is set up.
in the definition that the way it's set up.
And the way it's set up, right. So, okay, let me just, I'll see who else I can. Rachel should be in. Yeah, Diana, why don't I'm gonna just make you the host, and then I'm gonna try to go into Zoom on my other computer and see if I can change. That way you can get started.
Okay.
Okay.
So should I just start with a presentation and then you can get the host? Okay.
Yes. So I'm changing you back to the host, and then I'm gonna get on another computer, log in on Zoom there, and then try to admit people that way.
Okay.
Okay. Technology. Thank you.
Yeah. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry for all those little technical tweaks and issues. And Julie, thank you so much for introduction and for the invitation. I'm really honored to give a talk on climate change the week of the Earth Day. And I really like this opportunity to talk more about the climate change, and especially not with only scientists. So as Julie said, I am a climate scientist and Division of Marine Sciences at School of Ocean Sciences and Engineering at USM. And in case someone wants to follow me on Twitter, I put my Twitter handle, just in case you want to hear more about the climate and climate studies. So I think today I wanted to talk more about the strange times and maybe a little bit of parallel of the climate change crisis and the COVID pandemic crisis as well. So, so maybe I will kind of talk about examples from both crises, and maybe you kind of we talk about this a little bit as well. First of all, I want to say it's not surprising, but 2019 was the second warmest year on the record since 1880. And what we're seeing right now is the map of temperature anomalies. And this is for 2019, and it shows that there is an increase on almost 1 degree Celsius, which is about 2 degrees Fahrenheit, 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit. And the red areas shows where the increase in temperatures is the largest, which shows some areas where the increase in temperatures more than 4 degrees Celsius. And looking just at the last months, March of 2020, which I thought was quite warm here in Mississippi. And I just plotted the anomalies of March 2020. And it's indeed, that was very warm months. And there is anomalies of 1.18 degrees Celsius. So, and you could see that the Eastern North America has almost 4 degrees Celsius anomalies, and the large anomalies over Russia and China. And of course, now we're talking a lot about the maybe our emissions are lower than usual because we don't travel as much, or we don't fly as much. And first thing I looked to see how their measurements of CO2 are doing. And this is the updated measurements of atmospheric CO2. And you could see that there is a still increase in the emissions. And if we want to look at the compare the last months of March 2020 to relative, for example, to March 2019, we still see the increase on emissions of CO2. So here, I just wanted to show that there's 5 data sets, and there is absolute agreement that temperature rises since 1880. And there is an agreement that last 5 years and last decade were the warmest. And we also could see that every decade since 1960s has been warmer than the one before. And also shows that you could see from here that average temperature is now more than 1 degree warmer than the since 1880. So what we are climate scientists do, we're trying to estimate and look at the projections, how what's going to happen in the end of the century. So we run the climate models, and we look what climate models with different scenarios. And on the top, we could see the change, the predicted change of the temperature was 2 different scenarios. The red one scenario is of the business as usual, or maybe we can call it the worst case scenario. And the blue one is the best case scenario, then we cut all the emissions. So basically, hopefully we're gonna be somewhere between those scenarios. And at the end of the century, we're showing that the increase in temperature, it could be up to 6 degrees Celsius, or most likely about 3 or something degrees Celsius. And it also shows that the global mean sea rise level could be about up to 1 meter by the end of the century. So again, as a climate scientist, what we do, I run the climate models, and we are looking at the projections. Here I wanted to show one of my work, and I don't want to do a lot of details on science, but here on the top of the panel, I just wanted to show that this is how our models show the change in precipitation projected at the end of the century. So the red ones just to show the places where it's going to be increase in precipitation, and the blue areas showing that where it's going to be decrease in precipitation. But we as climate scientists, what we want to do is to work better on our models and to improve our models. And we put a lot of efforts on that. And one of the things that I have done as well, and as a lot of other climate scientists do, we're looking at some sensitive parameters and trying to identify them. And on the bottom panel, I could show that one of the work that I have done, that even if the parameters that they know what they should be, but if we change them a little bit, so the precipitation change could be completely different, and it could be as big as a signal itself. So what we do as a climate scientist, we're trying to avoid that, because no one will believe our models if we have the error as big as the signal itself. So it's a lot of effort, and I can proudly say that our models are much, much better, and each generation our models is getting even better, and they're much better than even a decade ago. So my other field and expertise is looking at the wildfires and climate change, or also the feedbacks of wildfires on climate as well. So we know that there is much more fires, and there is much more fires as a result of the climate change, because we have a drought and there is a drought and a heat waves, and we do know that the climate change goes to more intense and frequent fires. And for example, the fire season of 2017 was very unusual in intensity, as well as everybody heard about the bushfires in Australia in season 2019-2020. And we do have now studies that they show that the climate change attributed to those fires. One of the other catastrophe caused by climate change are the floods, because the climate change changed the rainfall, and the hydrological cycle gets more intense, so we get more floods as well. And we also know that the climate change is attributed to more intense and frequent and destructive hurricanes, tropical cycles. And I don't know if you heard about this, about the climate refugees or forced climate migrants, but there is actually a term for people non-voluntarily population displacement as a result of impact of climate change. And there is a studies that they show that now each year we have about 20 million of people had to leave their homes as a result of climate change, and there are projections of about 143 million people by 2050 in 3 regions. And they also, there's an estimate that because of the sea level rise as a result of 2 degrees Celsius warming, could submerge land that is currently home for 280 million people, which probably will have to be displaced by then. Here's on the figure in the image, this is the village of Kivalina in Alaska. And you could see that is, because of the erosions, houses are very, very close to the shore, and this village is most likely have to be evacuated. I believe everybody heard about the IPCC Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change special report on global warming of 101.5 degrees Celsius. And kind of a message from this report was that we need to get to net zero emissions by 2050 to hold warming to less than 1.5 degrees Celsius. So the question, what can we do? Well, first, as a climate scientist, I think the most important, and not only as a climate scientist, but as everybody, hopefully, and this talk here is just to talk about. We need to talk more about the climate change. And I think the most important here is also take personal actions and also talk about it as well. And believe a lot of people here, they're educators, and I think teach and educate about climate change is important as well. So we do need to teach climate change, and we do need to educate about climate change. And the other action, what we need to do is to help advance green solutions. So here just was kind of a thinking about small actions that everybody can take, and it looks like a little bingo card, which can you do like as fun, but it's really matter. Small things like driving or flying less, even using energy storage appliances, or walk or bike, a carpool to work, plant trees. This all things are important. And I think if you go to EPA website to calculate your carbon footprint, you could see how the small changes that you can, how much carbon footprint is each of the small things that you can do. And you could see that it's really matter. So the other thing is, as I said, is important to teach climate change. And this is the results from the polls from NPR, which you're probably familiar with, but they're asking parents if they want to teach kids climate change. And most of the parents said, yes, we do want to kids to learn about climate change. But unfortunately, there is, at the end, there's only 42% of teachers that they teach climate change, and 45% of parents who talk to their kids about climate change. So I think that we still can do more about this, and we still talk and teach about climate change, and especially that we do have already written climate science curriculum from Mississippi schools, which is initiative from 2 degrees Celsius Mississippi by Dr. Dominica Perry, which is freely available online. And I think it's a good resource that every teacher can use. And the other thing I wanted to share, that at School Ocean Science and Engineering, I'm a member of Climate and Sustainability Working Group. That was completely our initiative, and we meet once a month and we talk about how we can make our school better in terms of carbon footprints. So we're talking about reduction in physical waste and reduction in energy used and CO2 emissions. So first, kind of like first steps that we have done is we try to determine how much energy we use and how much CO2 emissions, convert that, and we determine, we're trying to determine our emissions offset, possibly through the current land use. And our last step is recommendation for future actions. So, and so we have done some calculations, and we look at our numbers at the School of Ocean Science and Engineering. We Looks like we spent about $1 million on energy in 2019. We produced more than 7,700 metric ton of carbon emissions, which are equivalent to 900 US households. We also see that there are more than 85% of total emissions are from electricity use. And if we want to follow the latest IPCC special report for 1.5 degrees Celsius for net zero by 2050, so we need to reduce emissions by about 260 tons per year for next 30 years. So, and we kind of make some calculations of our land use offset as well. And we're trying to see how we can do better. And I just kind of wanted to, I wanted to make a little parallel between these two crises, that COVID-19 pandemic and the climate change crisis. They both need urgent action, both need global cooperation, and both require drastic change from business as usual. So I kind of want to summarize here, and probably was kind of a lesson learned from COVID-19 pandemic. And I just want to say that climate change will impact everyone and will affect our economy as much, probably as even worse than COVID-19 pandemic. And possibly kind of a nod to myself as a scientist, but I also lesson learned that people do change their behaviors as social norms shift and they understand the reasons to act. So my other kind of nod to scientists that we need more to speak to people's values, and probably less talk about flattening the curve, using the terms like flattening the curve, but basically just talk to people and their values. And of course, my kind of a message is that we do need to start taking action on climate change now and work together on limit the worst case impacts. So that kind of my last message here. And hopefully we can all come together and act now. So if you have any questions, let me know. Is it how are we gonna do the questions?
We can do on, if you want to change the gallery view, so we're sort of having a conversation, you can do that.
Yeah, I see more people want to come.
And then if people want to write in, and thank you so much, Diana. That was terrific.
Well, thank you for inviting. And
sure. Can you talk a little bit more about, I love that word values and the parallel that you made between COVID-19 and sort of how we respond to the environment. Talk a little bit more about that word values in particular, and how we might use that with our friends, our families, as educators, etc.
yeah, well, I think is just values is, it means just talk to people what is important for them, is if who they are, if they are parents, you know, if they have family, talk about how it's important for their families, or so for example, in COVID-19, we were talking about how we identified more vulnerable population, and we talk about them. And I think we can find something that other people can connect with. Either it's about talking about church or club, or something that have the connection people can connect to.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
I have a statement. I'm thinking more locally, and the local climate change here in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I am fully convinced that the urban sprawl west of Hattiesburg and the deforestation contributes to our current tornado problem. I've never thought of Hattiesburg having tornadoes before 2013, but now it's commonplace. So that urban heat island effect and the deforestation to the west has manufactured our tornado problem, I believe. And
this is definitely possibly, and I do know that as you mentioned, there are almost no tornadoes before 2013 in our area, and there is much more often now. So there's possibly something that we need to look at and investigate. And I can't point something that is could say, well, this is the reason, but deforestation, it sounds like a good thing to check or to research.
I'm not sure about the reasons, but I happen to be friends with the individual who's now in charge of MEMA, Mississippi Emergency Management Association, and he told me that everybody thinks of the Tornado Alley as the Midwest, but around the early 2000s, the most frequent tornadoes per county moved to Mississippi and Alabama. So Tornado Alley for the country is now Mississippi and Alabama, and that was a change in the early 2000s. And it's less than it used to be in those places like Kansas and Iowa that everybody thinks about.
Yeah, well, we know something we know about tornadoes, they need a lot of moisture. And we do know because of the climate change, there is changes in hydrological cycle and the changes where this moisture is distributed right now. So there is a possible connection here, how this moisture is distributed, and which probably need to be investigated as well.
yeah, I like your simple actions to help, such as plant trees and grow gardens and educate. The Department of Energy has a program to set up solar farms. And so they're taking down forest in Mississippi to put up solar farms. And rather than using industrial brownfields would be better locations. I know because they knock on my door every month to buy my forest land to put up a solar farm. And so the Department of Energy needs to know what goes on in the real world from their programs, because that forest will likely absorb more carbon dioxide than the solar farm will save. So they need to get out of the office, go in the real world, and see what their programs are doing so that they can fine-tune them. And also in wind turbines, they're having a problem when they deconstruct a wind turbine where to put the fiberglass blades. They're almost too big for landfills.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult to recycle them. So there really needs to be a life cycle analysis on every program that we have.
Yes, I completely agree with that. I mean, it's definitely need to be looking at the long-term impact as well, not just immediate impact. And as you said, I do believe probably that forest is more important than to have a solar farm at that place instead. But again, it's a lot of research that has to be done before those happen.
Thanks for this really, and this is a lot of good information to think through concisely. So thank you for that. The recent virus models and the reaction to them has been an eye-opener for me. So many of this has been an eye-opener, but in particular, there's this dynamic that I think we're all observing now, where there were models, they predicted one thing, people reacted, the models seem to be less extreme than they were, and so there's now this argument, well, were the models wrong, or was it because people responded? And it seems like we're getting some foresight into what is likely to happen with the climate models. If we can be successful in educating and it's not as bad as we think, then we're going to be in the same boat of an argument between were the models correct, or were the, you know, the same thing but just at a different time scale. And so I'd love to hear different thoughts about how to educate around that. I think I'm totally mystified in how to communicate that with my friends that bring this topic up. And then and similarly, I think that this also probably going to be more on everybody's radar screens to think about the economic impact of whatever models that you have. So, you know, yeah, we mitigated coronavirus at this huge economic cost. Was it worth it or not? And how do you factor that in? Okay, we're going to mitigate climate change. What is its economic cost going to be? I think we'll probably start hearing that question more. And will that be worth it or not? How do you do that? So I think that we're getting this comprehensive global education and modeling and responsiveness and economic versus sort of natural trade-offs and so forth. And I don't know what to do with it, but I just thought I would, it really was just really coming to mind quite a bit through your presentation and in the context of everything else. So I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for your comment. Yeah, again, I think the big difference between two this parallel crisis is that climate change crisis is much slower, and we don't see how that gonna, and a lot of people don't see how they're gonna be impacted by that now or tomorrow, as opposed to COVID-19 pandemic, that people see things are changing within hours, and people trying to change the behavior according to that. So it's a little bit more extreme in terms of acting, but I think climate change also requires much more extreme measures, and we do need to act now.
It's hard to stop people's animal instincts. Go try and tell people we need a 55-mile-per-hour speed limit. That would reduce carbon dioxide dramatically. Just reducing every speed limit to 55. But politically, I don't think it will go over. Do you? I mean, to simple things like reducing the speed limit. You know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there are, I think there is a much more easier and cheaper and thing that we can try to do. right now than rather than trying to change the speed limit. We probably could encourage people to do work from home or less traveling. Actually, one thing then in Hattiesburg that I see that we could probably change, and it will probably cause a lot of save us a lot of carbon emissions, is synchronize all the traffic lights. I'm just thinking how much carbon emissions going on those traffic lights on Hardy every time. So yeah, I mean, small things like this could change a lot, but again, we need to see what is, as you say, we choose your battles.
Thank you for mentioning the 2C curriculum that Dominica has developed. It's really very detailed. It's excellent. I actually invited her to the talk today, and I'll be sure to share the recording with her as well. But if you are looking for things to do with kids, there are 4 really basic, easy experiments in her curriculum that are sort of middle grades level. So you could do those, you know, right now while you're stuck at home. And Henry, some of them are easy enough. They could be a good party trick to show your friends. Here's an example of what a carbon footprint looks like. They're very basic. They use just kind of home materials, and but they're just extremely illustrative of sort of some of these big names and things that people toss around, but they don't really understand the physics and the chemistry of it. So yeah, Dominica's done a really terrific job. For sure. Who else has some other questions for Diana?
I have first of all, that was a fantastic presentation, and I would like to, if there's any way I could get a copy of it, there's some things in it I wanted to show to my family. That would be awesome, especially the little kind of bingo card thing. I think that would be something neat to see, you know, how many things you are doing now and how many things you can add on to that to make a difference. But I wanted to mention that we're doing, through the Walter Anderson Museum, we're going to do an Earth Day thing tomorrow. So if anyone has kids or grandkids or just wants to, it'll be on Facebook Live. I'm not sure what time, sometime in the afternoon. And we're also going to post the lesson plans, but they're, you know, Earth Day lesson plans geared around art, and we'll talk about science and climate and stuff a little bit on that. But anyway, if anybody's interested in that, we started an Art Plus program at the museum. It was kind of a long-term thing that we were looking at to give things to teachers to use arts integration with science and technology and engineering. And it became a more short-term goal after we had to close the museum down. But we're constantly posting videos, and we're building lesson plans that integrate science in particular. And so if anyone's interested in that, it's on the Walter Anderson website.
Very good.
All right. Thank you.
Rachel, do you have any questions? I kept thinking about you and Diana, and you two need to meet in person at some point, but there's a lot of overlap between, I think, your interests and your value systems, actually.
Yeah, well, first I want to say thank you for the Walter Anderson tip, because I'm definitely going to use that with my millions of kids that live in my house. Yeah, Diana, I really would love to set up a time to chat with you about some things. But one thing that I was thinking about, just in terms of another local example, is the opening of the Bonnie Carey Spillway, and just what your insight is into that, because I've put a lot of thought into in terms of value systems and you know, going to this COVID-19 example about how we have to open it because we need to protect these communities from flooding. But if we don't, you know, because there are all these environmental ramifications, and if we don't, then it displaces a lot of people who then have to go to shelters or somewhere where they can't be participating in social distancing. So just really interesting in how we can talk to our youth about their value systems and you know, and educate them appropriately. So just kind of curious about what you know about what's going on with that and any insight you have into something like that.
Yeah, that's very interesting and very important point and issue that we kind of working on right now. We're trying to estimate the impacts of the Bonnie Carey spillway opening and see how that, if we can monitor, how we can monitor that, and how we can protect our ecosystem. But I don't think at this point there's much we can do rather than monitor that and learn how we can what we can do. But I mean, we as a scientist, not as an engineers. So there's possibly should be some sort of engineering solution to that problem in the future. So did you have any thoughts, or did anybody else had any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think we should turn New Orleans into a saltwater port and allow the river to go its natural course now. And it will probably be cheaper than trying to keep the Mississippi River going its current path. And we'll have to move some houses around Morgan City, but it can be done. The Dutch did it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's probably should come from some sort of engineering solution that something could possibly be done there.
There's an interesting article in the Atlantic today about Florida and sea level rise. If any of you are interested in reading that this afternoon, but it's you know, some of the work they've done in Miami with the pumps and I mean, it's amazing how much money they've invested. I mean, I think obviously Alaska is being impacted, but you know, Florida and New Orleans, I think these are the two areas in the contiguous US anyway that are probably the most vulnerable. And the Atlantic article about Florida is really very, very timely, and you know, in particular with hurricane season right around the corner for all of us, troubling, of course.
Well, let me ask you an academic question. The increased frozen precipitation over Greenland, that is sort of mitigating the rate of sea level rise. Isn't that correct? That increased precipitation from climate change is actually slowing the rate of rise.
Well, there's always a studies looking at those feedbacks and you know, things that they slow down the climate change and things that we didn't think before, and that's coming kind of arise as we go, because this process were not existed at that point. So yeah, it's still a lot of research done about it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Diana, I know you have to go because I think your husband is teaching. So I want to say thank you so much for your time. And this has been a great conversation and a little bright spot in all this dark. So thank you all for being here with us today.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day.
Thank you.
Thanks for the invitation, Julie.
Oh, my pleasure, Tony. Thanks for joining us. Good to see you.
Enjoyed it. Good to see you. Take care.
Bye all.